Okay, just picture this for a second. You're in a tiny plane, and you look down. All you see, as far as the eye can see, is just this endless, deep green of the Amazon jungle. It's beautiful, but it's also a world of hidden dangers and just complete isolation. This isn't the opening scene of a movie. Nope. This is the real-life start to an absolutely unbelievable story of survival.
And that brings us to the one question that hangs over this entire story. 4 children stranded after a plane crash, all alone in the Amazon. I mean, we're talking about one of the most hazardous places on the entire planet. So how on earth could they possibly survive?
So let's set this scene. The story kicks off on May 1st, 2023. A family gets on a small plane for what's supposed to be just a routine flight. But as you can guess, this plane is never going to reach its destination. Instead, this journey turns into this harrowing test of the human will to live.
So who was on this tiny 6-seater plane? It was Magdalena Mukutoy and her 4 children. There was 13-year-old Leslie, 9-year-old Selene, little 4-year-old Tien, and the baby, Kristen, who was just 11 months old. They were a family heading to a new life, with absolutely no idea of the ordeal waiting for them.
It all starts out as a routine flight at 7:30 in the morning. The kids are probably just looking out the window at that sea of green. But then, in an instant, everything changes. The sky goes dark. A massive storm just swallows the plane. And then, a loud bang. The engine fails. The plane is going down, fast, hurtling right towards the jungle floor.
The impact must have been catastrophic. The roar of the engine is just gone, replaced by this horrible sound of metal twisting and trees snapping. For everyone inside, their world is plunged into a terrifying new reality of just silence and darkness, deep, deep in the Amazon.
But out of this absolute devastation, an unlikely leader steps up. And this is where the real story of survival truly, truly begins.
Imagine waking up in that chaos. That's what 13-year-old Leslie did, and she makes this heartbreaking discovery. The pilot and the co-pilot, they didn't make it. She finds her younger brother and sisters, injured but alive. And their mother, Magdalena, is also alive, but she's very, very badly hurt. I mean, think about that. She's just a teenager, facing this unimaginable grief and fear, but she pushes all of that aside. She knows in that instant that she has to be the protector. Her siblings' lives are now completely, 100% on her shoulders. For 4 days, they stayed right there, by their mother's side in the wreckage. But before she passed away, her last words to her children were, "Go. You guys are gonna be fine." And with that final, heavy instruction, Leslie knew what she had to do. She had to lead them out of there.
Okay, so surviving the crash itself was a miracle, right? But that was just the beginning. Now they had to face an even bigger challenge, staying alive in a place that can be your best friend or your worst enemy for who knows how long.
And this wasn't just an ordeal that lasted a day, or even a week. These kids survived alone in one of the world's most dangerous environments for 40 days. It's a length of time that's just almost impossible to wrap your head around. And the jungle, I mean, it throws everything at you. Every single day was a brand new battle. A battle against starvation, against jaguars and poisonous snakes, against non-stop rain, and maybe worst of all, against that crippling weight of just fear and hopelessness. But they weren't completely helpless. They had their own tools. From the plane, they managed to salvage a small bag of cassava flour. They used giant leaves to build little shelters to stay dry. Leslie would tell stories to keep their spirits up. But their most powerful tool? That was something they carried inside them. Knowledge of the jungle, taught to them by their grandmother. So while these kids are fighting this incredibly private battle for their lives, a massive public search is kicking off to find them. But looking for someone in the Amazon, that's like trying to find a needle in, not a haystack, but an entire country made of haystacks. The Colombian government launched this huge rescue mission. They sent in the army, the police, search dogs, the whole shebang. But, and this is so important, they were joined by local indigenous volunteers, people who understood the jungle in a way that no outsider ever could. At first, when the rescuers find the plane wreckage and the bodies of the adults, they're probably thinking the worst. But then, they start finding these little clues, tiny signs of life that just fuel this desperate hope. A half-eaten fruit, some tiny footprints in the mud, a baby's bottle. This was proof. The children were alive, and they were on the move. So for 40 long, grueling days, the children struggled,
and the rescuers searched. And finally, this incredible story of survival and desperation, it reaches its dramatic, unbelievable conclusion.
A search party, following that trail of tiny clues, finally spotted them. They were deep in the jungle, so far from the crash site. They were weak, they were emaciated, covered in insect bites, but, miraculously, they were alive.
For the soldiers who found them, it was just this incredibly emotional sight. The younger kids were exhausted. They could barely move. But Leslie, the 13-year-old leader, she was still on her feet, standing guard over her brother and sisters. She never, ever gave up.
So the big question is, how? How was this even possible? Well, the world quickly learned that this wasn't just a miracle of luck or pure chance. No, this was a miracle of knowledge. Their survival was this powerful testament to the value of traditional indigenous wisdom. Leslie survived because she remembered the lessons her grandmother had been teaching her since she was a little girl. She knew which plants were safe to eat. She knew which ones were poisonous. She knew how to find clean water. This ancient wisdom, passed down through generations, was literally their life-saving tool.
And that's really what this whole incredible story of resilience leaves us with, right? It leaves us with a huge question. In our modern world, so focused on technology and progress, what vital, life-saving wisdom are we forgetting or ignoring? The story of these 4 children proves that sometimes the most powerful knowledge we have is also the oldest.